Hey, welcome to David Henning Mindset, and I want to tell you I am so excited about today because my special guest is a great friend of mine, somebody who I have a great deal of respect for, someone who we have amazing conversations, and I want to share with you guys some of the conversations that we have. So my guest today, and Carlos, I'm going to refer to you as an entrepreneurial psychologist. Sure. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. You got it.
Okay. So back in the day, when I went to college, psychology was one of my favorite subjects. I loved it. It was so much my favorite subject that I actually majored in finance.
There you go. Right.
No, I love psychology. I love human nature. I love trying to understand people. Right. I don't think I ever will, but I love the pursuit of that knowledge.
Totally.
And I think with you being like an entrepreneurial psychologist, in my opinion, you're very different than most psychologists.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think about going to the psychologist and thinking about like my mommy and daddy issues and things like that.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurs think very differently than most people.
There's a very different mindset there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we need a lot of help.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
We talked about this the other day is like an outside perspective. Because, you hear people say sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So, one of the things, David, for me was, my degree is as a clinical psychologist, and that's my background, right? But what I found is that oftentimes the work that I'm doing in the office one-on-one with folks, whether they're coming in, to focus on depression, anxiety, stress, a marital issue, a lot of the components where we get caught up is in the mindset, right? And those obstacles become a way in which they just impact our lives. We're not finding that happiness. We're not finding the success we want. And it's no different with entrepreneurs, with athletes, people that are very driven. The mental blocks sometimes are the same. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, I've seen the amazing things you do for people and the difference you've made.
Thank you.
But I tried to apply what you do to what I do.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I talk with families, have you ever wondered how you can have one family who makes $40,000 a year in income, but they save a ton of money? And then you have somebody else who makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they can't save a dime.
Right.
And they struggle with money even though they make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I always think about the mental aspect of how people relate to money. And one of the interesting conversations we've had is about manifesting, right? And how do you manifest things, and does that apply to money?
Right.
So I want to kind of get your viewpoint and how you feel about the psychological aspect of how do you manifest better financial results?
Absolutely. I know we had a conversation recently, right? We were talking about The Secret, right? The Secret came out some years back, and there were some people that really gravitated towards that. And there were some people, and this is where you and I connected, that were like, this is kind of hokey. Come on, really just put good energy out there. Without getting too esoteric, I do think that there is a huge value there. We all are energy and all of that good stuff. But without even going down that road, the way I frame it from a psychological perspective is this. There is a difference in the mindset of an individual who can, and this isn't just about positive thinking, but has a backdrop or a default of positive mindset, right? And what that is, and I'm going to use the word faith, not in a religious sense or a spiritual sense, but faith that things are going to work out, right? So the difference between that person and the person that doesn't have that faith, on the days when things get hard, on the days when there's struggles, and they're going to be there, right? As an entrepreneur yourself, you know this.
Yeah.
But on the days when things get tough, when we're struggling, when we're looking around and everything seems grim, that person that has that mentality, that faith that I'm going to get through this. There's a way for me to get in, around this obstacle, under it. That psychologically is what keeps people going. It's resilience, right? So we don't have to look at it in this manifesting, sort of spiritual sense, but if we can have that inner faith that I'm going to make it, I'm going to figure this out no matter how hard it gets, those are the types of people that I think continue to find success, continue to be successful in what they do, and eventually are able to find and establish sort of the wealth that they're looking for.
You talk about faith for a second, and there's that quote, right? With faith, all things are possible.
Yes.
And there's a psychological effect with all that. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but whatever you tell your mind, right? Your mind goes to work on it. It doesn't say it's a lie, it's a truth, but whatever you convince your mind to do is what your actual, you go to work on.
Totally. Totally. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot. If there's any Joe Dispenza fans out there, right? About like if from the moment you wake up in the morning, you're in this cycle of repetitive negative thoughts, right? You stub your toe, negative thought, right? It's like everything consistently, this pattern of going to the negative. And now a part of that is our brain. Believe it or not, our brain is wired to problem solve. Right?
Absolutely.
But what happens is we are often trying to problem solve every potential problem that might ever come up and find every possible solution for it, and it's just not possible. That's sometimes where we lead to sort of anxiety and sort of that stress that impacts a lot of people. But I know that for a lot of folks, it's just like, I know it's not just about changing my thoughts. It's really about connecting with, this is who I am now. I'm not that person that's going to catastrophize everything, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen people time and time again, right? The same situation, the same hard, difficult life situation, one can be met with disaster, I throw my hands up, I'm giving up, and another is with this resilience of like, I know this is hard, I know there's a lesson in here, and I know my capacity to have the resolve to get past life challenges, and I'm going to keep moving forward. There's a big difference in between those two spaces.
Yeah, so do you think, when we use the word manifest, like manifesting your thoughts, whether negative or positive, like if you get up in the daytime and you're like, hey, all these things are going to happen to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how it happens,
yeah.
Whether positive or negative. So your brain just actively goes to work, right, on what you're manifesting.
Totally.
Like what you're thinking about.
Here's this thing, my brother's a police officer for many years, and he told me, police officers, when they're on the side of the road, why they turn on their lights and stuff, oftentimes they'll have people that are driving through, right? A cop's pulled someone over, because they're focusing on the lights on the side of the road, they'll go right into the vehicle. Mm-hmm. Right? So absolutely, like what we focus on, you better believe that that's what we're going to manifest, that's the thing that's going to start coming into our life.
Yeah, and so we want to teach people how to manifest the positive things, like the positive changes that'll help them attract wealth and become more affluent and save better and all the things. Because mentally, if we tell ourselves we're bad at saving, right? If we're bad at accumulating wealth, if we're always making the wrong money decisions, that's what our mind goes to work on.
Yeah.
Right?
And one of the things you and I have talked about in the past, and for me as a clinical psychologist, I'm a big believer that in our early developmental years, we take in so much messaging, and some of it is really great and helpful, and some of it really isn't. So when we're talking about the mindset about money, it's important to think about what were some of the things that we heard about money and finance in our early years, right? For instance, I come from an immigrant family, and so it was really difficult. Money was there was always stress and conflict around money growing up in my home, right? So like, how does that sort of go into the wiring that now dictates your beliefs around money as an adult? Here's a perfect example. My fiance grew up with a father who's a neurologist and never had to worry about money, right? So when we come together as a couple, here's somebody that had to identify their belief system of like, whoa, money is scarce, we need to save every penny, I need to stress out about everything and make sure that the income is, and someone that was just sort of laid back, like, hey, money will always be there, we'll figure it out, we're okay, right? And so it started to bring some conversations to the table about like, what is our belief systems around money? What are we trying to accomplish goal-wise in the future financially? And how do we navigate through these belief systems that are wired into us?
So that brings up a really interesting topic for me. You talk about belief systems.
Yeah.
And your upbringing can really affect your belief systems and how things work.
Absolutely.
What are some mental roadblocks that people have that prevent them from either earning or accumulating, wealth and money?
Totally. So one part of it, David, is I think these belief systems, right? I mean, if you just think in our culture at large, we often hear like money is the root of all evil, right? Or this idea of like money doesn't grow on trees, or people that have money and wealth are greedy, right? And they're all just about themselves. And so we start to, there's a gentleman I worked with some years ago who, amazing job, amazing income, but constantly in this like stressful state and panic about, is my money gonna last me? That wasn't about the money he's making. Like, he can look at the data and externally see, like, look at that bank account.
Yeah.
Like, everything is okay. But internally, there's this emotional reaction of like, it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. So I think taking a look at what are those belief systems that we had growing up, right? In my home, Dad was just sort of a frivolous spender, right? He'd go out, buy a lottery ticket, and my mom was the complete opposite, right? It was like the checkbook and every little dime, and then there was this constant like arguing, right? And so for me, there wasn't many good financial lessons growing up.
Right.
I don't think there is for a lot of us. I mean, what is it? Something like about only 20 states are required right now that high school students need to take an economics or financial class of some kind, right? So I didn't get the financial education at home. I didn't get it at school. I got it through maxing out credit cards early on, making the mistakes, right? So I think that's a part of what affects us, our own belief system.
Yeah.
But let's talk about keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, and something I talk about with my clients a lot is, unfortunately, our system is geared towards these negative financial thoughts or beliefs. Like, think about your college experience. Like, I know when I went to college, the first place you go is the guidance counselor, and they help you pick your major, pick your courses and everything, right? But then where's the very next place you go? Financial aid, right? So you go into financial aid and they're like, oh, here's a financial, student loan that you can take out and you're going to pay on it for the rest of your life.
Don't worry about it. You'll pay it, down the road.
And it's like, we're going to give you more money than you need for school because you got to have some money to live off of, right?
Exactly.
So you're like 18. This is the first time you've had any financial responsibility. And you're like, okay, I'll sign on the dotted line. You get these loans. You're like, hey, it's just money and it's cheap, right? And then you get done with the financial aid office. Where's the next place you go? The bookstore to get all your books. Well, who's sitting in front of the bookstore? Well, all the credit card companies, Visa, MasterCard, Discover. And they're like, hey, we're going to give you this credit card. But you're like, I'm a student. I don't have a job. I don't have any history or anything like that. That's all right. You're a student. You're pre-approved. Yeah. And as a student, we're not prepared for it, right? Because you've never had that financial responsibility. So what do? Your friends call you up, hey, let's go down the street to the restaurant. Let's go to the movies. Let's go bowling. Well, I don't have any money, but I have this credit card I just got. So you start maxing out these credit cards with no way to pay them back. So they're conditioning us that debt is okay from day one.
Right. Yeah, like it's just a natural part of the process. It's the place where we should live. Another mindset too, David, that I see often is the emotional connection to money, right? And what I mean by that is like, hey, did mom and dad, like, every time you were feeling sad or feeling down as a kid, go out and buy you something? Okay, if you got trained in that mindset as an adult when things are going rough, you might find yourself doing a little shopping. Right? And finding ways to soothe that way. So sometimes even that gets caught up in our mindset, and we need to take a look at those things as well.
That's a great point. I never even thought of that. And then you said something a minute ago too that was very important. You said your image, right? And keeping up with the Joneses. And so I think there's a huge problem right now in this country where you equate your self-worth with your net worth.
Yes.
Right? And people are buying things to impress other people. That really their opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah. So you asked the question earlier, right, of like what are some of the roadblocks? When it comes to that, I really believe that we grow up in a culture where so much emphasis and value is placed on achievement and success, right? And that's great. I think that's a great lesson to teach children. But I think sometimes what we forget is if that message is just constantly on achieve, we're also instilling a message of shame around failure. Why do people struggle so much when they fail? It's because there's a shame around it. Like it's not okay to fail. Now, as an entrepreneur or a business owner, you know that failure is just a part of the game.
Absolutely.
Right? But failure is a part of the game in life for everybody. I've never yet met someone that hasn't had a ton of failures in their life.
Yeah.
Right? But we have this shame around it, and so that affects us emotionally too. Another thing that happens mindset-wise is, if we're constantly told when we're younger, get better grades, right? Be better at baseball, piano, ballet, the thing, right? It's just this constant be better, be better, be better. We also instill the message of like, whatever you're doing, it's not enough.
Right.
So we start to believe as humans, like the only way I can feel validation, love, respect from people is by being perfect, by being at the top. And so like that's impossible in a world that's so messy and complicated. But I truly believe, David, I truly believe this to be true, that like 95% of society, and not just here in this country, but in other places, are living a life of looking for internal validation and comfort from external things. Vehicles, money, the job title, all of it, right? And so they keep chasing this elusive dream because the thing that needs to be fulfilled is just an internal sense of like appreciation, gratitude, confidence of the self, right? Not the car, not the house. Because the conversation I often have, and you've probably had people similar, right? They buy the house. And within 6 months, they're like, I'm not happy anymore. What's the next thing, right? What's the next thing I need to achieve? Where's the next goal? What's the next step, right? And it's just constantly not feeling fulfilled. How many millionaires and billionaires?
They always want more. They're never satisfied.
Right.
They'll hit a milestone. Like all of my really, really successful friends.
Yeah.
They'll hit a milestone. They'll celebrate for maybe an hour, maybe a day, and then they're on to the next milestone. And they're always trying to achieve more.
Yeah.
And that's what drives them.
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurs, we're very conflicted. Another conversation we have all the time is we talk about, I love one of your campaigns right now. Mm-hmm. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And so what I equate that to as an entrepreneur, we talk about success and failures. Mm-hmm. The most successful entrepreneurs I know have failed way more than anybody else who hasn't even tried, right? Totally. So people have a fear of failure. But successful entrepreneurs have failed way more than most people. Mm-hmm. And so they have a mental toughness about them. Yeah. And they understand that they're going to fail. They don't care about other people's opinions. But on the flip side of that, when you have to be so mentally tough, you think it's not okay to share like your shortcomings sometimes.
Yeah.
And they keep it in, and that creates a stressful environment like internally for most entrepreneurs.
Yeah. It's this process of like constantly keeping it together, right? And entrepreneurs, a lot of people, right? But entrepreneurs, athletes, these people that are very type A, that carry a lot of stress, that carry a lot of pressure, we then, it's also that internal, relentless, critical voice that some of us have that's saying like, you're not hitting the mark, you're not hitting the target, you're not waking up early enough, you're not doing the work, why are you being so lazy, right? Like that voice just like takes over. And when life gets challenging, we then start to feel very overwhelmed. I believe that a lot of the anxiety and depression we see in our society, in our culture, is just us trying to like keep everything in and just, putting on the face mask in the morning, right? Like everything is solid and okay, and feeling so afraid to say, God, David, I'm going through a really hard time right now. Stuff is tough at home. My business isn't doing well. And just sometimes the process of communicating that and having someone like empathize with that, because you can probably empathize. You know how it feels when things get tough, right? Now we're liberating all that energy. We're taking all of that junk out and creating more energy and space for us to do the things that inspire and motivate us.
Wow, that's powerful. So I want to ask you like one last question.
Yeah.
So we talk about a lot of the challenges in the way people think. Mm-hmm. What are some shifts that people can make in their mindset to attract more success, more abundance, and do things so that they do have the wealth that they need and more, less stress about money?
Totally. I think the one key thing that we can do, because our brain is wired to focus on finding solutions, oftentimes we're thinking in the future.
Okay.
Right? What are the potential problems that can come into my life, and how am I going to handle and manage them?
Anticipation.
Right? The anticipation, which equals sometimes stress, which can equal anxiety, which can equal, unmanaged panic attacks, depression, some mental health condition. But even if it's just an underlying constant tension every day, that's not healthy for us. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing, the biggest shift I have been able to make from a mindset perspective is to say to myself, instead of worrying, Carlos, about all of the potential things that may come up and how are you going to handle them, why don't you stop and think about your journey this far? Mm-hmm. Not just as an entrepreneur, not just as a business, as a human being. Think of all of the challenges you've been through. Think of all of the difficulties. Think of all the times you've been down and have managed to find a way to get back up.
Yeah.
You maybe didn't have the answers at the time, you didn't have the knowledge, but you found it. Or maybe you relied on somebody. But if most of us stop, take a look over our shoulder, and reflect on how resilient we've actually been throughout our lives, mm-hmm. what's to say that's going to change moving forward?
Yeah.
You're going to use the same set of skills, the same, compassion, the same, energy when things get tough again. So why the hell am I going to worry about the future? I'll figure it out. I always have.
It's kind of like celebrating all your successes
at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all of this with us. Dr. Carlos Garcia, this is amazing, great information on the psychology of success, especially with how it affects your money and your mindset. So just remember, people, good money decisions just make sense.